Hello, we are now back for our next section, which is section 3 for contracts. Again, this is frequently asked questions around real estate contracts. And the first question is, can you accept an offer after you have counter offered that offer? Kind of a tongue twister. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? But the question is, can you accept an offer after you have counter offered that offer? And the answer is technically no. After an offer may be either accepted, rejected, or counteroffered. And a counteroffer terminates the original offer. Unlike a rejection, a counteroffer continues the negotiation, and the original offer would have to be, it would have to be accepted, those terms and conditions. Any offer may be terminated prior to the acceptance, even after it has been offered with a future must accept by deadline. The key is that the revocation of the offer must be communicated and notified to the offeree prior to any acceptance. And it's good business to practice, document, and get everything in writing for a formality. So let's cover actually that bottom section first, which means if I write an offer, present it to the seller's agent, it's got a deadline. And I hope you all are writing deadlines of not just a date and a time on your contracts. That's very, very helpful. I know a lot of you think that it's a standard 24 hours. That is not a written rule or law anywhere. You can put any time in there. And I think that there's probably an art to response times when you're writing offers. And I think maybe too long just allows in this market more offers to come in when maybe we've got very, very low inventory right now. As that shifts and there's maybe not as much demand, 24 hours might make more sense. But right now, that's just going to allow more competition. You probably want to shrink that time. However, I've seen response times where agents have shared with me that the response time is 10 minutes. That's a really slick, cool move. However, I don't know that it's the reality of real estate in terms of realistic. Obviously, people have jobs and moving parts and maybe just literally can't respond that quickly. And then you've got an expired offer. So what this is saying is, for example, if I write a response for noon tomorrow, my buyer can rescind or revoke their offer at any time before the seller accepts it. We don't have to let that run out until noon. So let's say my buyer takes the pillow test, sleeps on it, and decides they never want to sleep in it. We can contact the seller that next morning, again, document everything, and revoke that offer. And I've had agents say, oh, but the seller was going to accept it. They thought they had until noon. They did have until noon. However, in the meantime, the buyer's made another decision and you didn't communicate that you were documenting it and accepting that and returning it with a signature. Okay. So the buyer, until it's accepted, again, can revoke or rescind that offer at any time. That's why it's important that if you have your sellers sign something or say that they will accept it, get it signed and returned back as soon as possible. Don't necessarily wait for that deadline, especially if you've got quite a bit of time. Okay. So now let's go back to the counteroffer part of the conversation. And that says if I write an offer for 150,000 and the buyer comes back and says 155, and then I go back and I say, sorry, nope, I want 150. I wanted 150. I'm going to walk away. And then the seller calls a day later and says, okay, I was thinking emotionally. I finally decided I will take the 150. Am I obligated to buy it at 150? No, because the moment that they counteroffered, it terminated my original offer. Now, I think a lot of us in this world, especially with text and email and some of those things, we are kind of at a tennis match, right? We're just lobbing that ball or that offer back and forth until we have what we call a meeting of the minds, which is an offer and a final acceptance. That's great. However, I do think that there's times in that process where it makes sense for you to understand how that counteroffer really works. And I'm not saying to ever disrespect someone's money, but has anyone ever had it down to just the washer and dryer that's 12 years old, that's maybe worth $50 a piece, but each party thinks it's worth $500, $1,000? That is one of those times where it might be time to just educate the seller on how that process works. And if we go back with any sort of counteroffer, we may not ever get them back to have a deal. It does open up an opportunity for the other party to walk away. So again, not that they've got to sell the washer and dryer, not that we're trying to bully them into anything, but I do think education on what that means is key. I think a lot of clients, buyers and sellers, just automatically think that they're going to get a response to an offer. And that's not necessarily going to be the case. Again, it's going to be accepted, rejected, or counteroffered. Okay. Hope that helps just clarify a little bit. The next question is, what does time is of the essence mean? And I think that we throw this term around in real estate quite a bit, and what maybe our intended use versus what it really means, sometimes that gets grayed a little bit. So here's the actual definition for you. It's a term used in contract law expressing the need for timely completion. However, excuse me, it does not mean everything must be done ASAP. It means that there's certain deadlines within the contract that must be met, or it could cause harm, such as a delayed closing. Okay. So within the contract, there's all of these deadlines so that we can get to the actual closing and finalize and have an executed contract. So for example, 5 days to turn in earnest money, 10 days to do the home inspection. Maybe you're writing 30 days for the appraisal, final underwriting, 5 days before closing, final walkthrough, 3 days before closing. All of these items must hit the deadline, or we've got partial non-performance on the contract. So time is of the essence means all those deadlines must be met in order to secure that contract and actually get to closing day. The next question is, how do I enact a protective clause? And a protective clause, just so that we understand the definition, that is what protects our buyers that we meet during our listing period, so that the seller doesn't try to sell it directly to that buyer right after the listing expires and cut us out of our hard work. Has anyone ever had a situation where a buyer looked at the property with you? Iowa got a lot of small towns. My friend Jeannie always says Des Moines is a cocktail party, which means the rest of Iowa is probably even more intimate than that. So it kind of seems like a lot of people know each other. And has anyone ever had a buyer then run into the seller and said, "Oh my gosh, we looked at your house in an open house. We met Amy." And the seller said, "Oh, my listing's going to expire in about a month. You wait, and then won't have the commission to pay Amy, and I'll give you a deal on a property." We're trying to avoid that activity. So that's why we've got broker protective clauses. And here's how you enact it. Okay. Number one, there must be a provision for the protective clause in the original listing contract. Number two, it must establish a definite protection period. And the third step is, and this is the important one that I think gets missed a lot, is the broker must furnish to the owner, prior to the expiration of the listing, the names and addresses of persons to whom the property was presented during the active listing time period. Okay. So number one, a protective clause must be a part of your original listing agreement. And guess what? You're covered there. I don't know of any listing agreements I've seen in the state of Iowa that this is not pre-printed in there for you already. Okay. Including, I know a lot of associations, we've gone to standard listing agreements, even Form Simplicity with the Iowa Association of Realtors. That is a stock phrase about broker protection. Second step says that there must be a definite period of time after the listing expires that this clause is in effect. Okay. This is the blank where you fill in the number of days typically. And I know a lot of agents have shared with me they use 180 days, which would be 6 months. I've had agents tell me that they do 3 months. I've had agents, I've seen contracts that say 30 days. I'm going to let you consult with your broker around standards for that. I'm also going to encourage you that it's maybe a negotiable item because it's left blank. And that every situation might be a little bit different. But again, I see 180 days is kind of a stock number in our market. But throughout Iowa, again, talk to your broker and kind of break down what maybe is a red light, green light around how to use that number. Now, the third part that I said is the one that is most important that I think always gets missed. And that is a list of the names and addresses of the parties that have been interested in the property that showed it. Now, a lot of us are skipping this part because what's your focus? Making a list of all the names and addresses of every buyer that's been through, or getting the property sold? And most of us, it's getting the property sold. So a great source for those lists is going to be your open house sign-in sheets. You've got a list of buyers there. Another great source is going to be pull that Supra lockbox and everyone that showed the property, identify their buyers. Now, not every agent is going to give you the name and address of their buyer. And if you've had a lot of showings, that might be a lot of tedious work that you're ready to instantly blow off and go out and find another listing because you just had one expire, right? However, in that Supra list, I'm going to encourage you to look for agents that you've got a good working relationship with that you feel would share that information, such as the agents in your office or people that you have, again, good connections with in your real estate community. That's why you want to be friendly with everyone and have good working relationships with the agents in your community. And anyone that maybe showed the property multiple times. They maybe did a second showing or something like that. Those are the people I would identify first. Now, in a market that's maybe moving really, really quickly, we don't have a lot of broker protection clauses maybe being used. In a market where there's a lot of inventory and maybe not as much demand, we've maybe switched to a buyer's market. That might look a little bit different because buyers might be looking at a lot of properties before they make a decision, which means one could expire. Another time I think a broker protection clause works really well is for those higher end properties that you maybe did a 6-month listing for. However, the average days on market maybe for that price point is beyond 6 months. And sometimes those buyers take a little bit longer to identify, and they maybe take a little bit longer in the selection process as well. So those are some good resources and maybe some thoughts to think about because I think we all can admit we've left commission money on the table, but by not using these protective clauses at all or using them correctly. Excuse me, the next question is, may I approach my neighbor who has had their house unsuccessfully listed with another brokerage? Has anyone ever backed out their driveway and in the rear view mirror, you saw a for sale sign in your neighbor's yard and it didn't have your name on it, right? That is the worst feeling. And you're backing out every day and you're seeing that sign day after day. And you think, if they would have just listed with me, I could have gotten that sold. I know their house so well. I know the neighborhood so well, whatever it might be. Here's your answer though. You may only speak to a seller whom you know or have reason to know is in a currently listed brokerage agreement, such as an exclusive right to sell or an exclusive agency, if the seller talks to you first. So it's okay to talk to them if they speak to you first. Okay. Then a new agreement for a listing contract can be made to sync up with the expiration of their current listing. And the reason that the Iowa Code says a new agreement can be put in place to sync up with the expiration of their old one is because sellers can only terminate their current listing contract by mutual agreement, which means they're agreeing to get out of it, but their current broker must also agree to release them. And every once in a while, there is a broker who says, nope, sorry, we're under a listing agreement until December 30th, and they hold them true to having that listing until December 30th. It's not our place as agents to interfere with someone else's contract and say, oh no, tell them to cancel it. They'll cancel it for you, and then I'll list it for you tomorrow. That's not a guarantee. And again, you're not a party to that contract. Okay. The next question is, how can a buyer submit an anonymous offer to purchase a property? Okay. So this is for all of you that might be working with a celebrity. Maybe Ashton Kutcher is your client coming to Iowa to buy a new house for his mother or something in Iowa City. Or every once in a while, you will have maybe a divorcing spouse who didn't get the house in the divorce decree, but they do want to come back and purchase it after the fact when it goes up for sale. I think farmland, this can be an option as well. Farmland can be very competitive over who is the star football player in someone's hometown. They can be very big farm rivals then as adults. Has anyone contended with that before in their career? So these are times where you might have a buyer that wants to write an anonymous offer. Okay. And here's what we know, that in general, the parties to the contract should be adequately identified and mutually agreed to the sale and purchase of the property. However, a method to submit an anonymous offer would be insert the words, buyer to remain anonymous until offer after offer is accepted. The key, though, that makes this really tricky is, would the seller accept an offer that's written this way? How do you establish proof of funds, right? And so again, it's a method to explore, but the key is the seller going to take that offer serious? That is our law supplement update for frequently asked questions for contracts. Again, you'll have a quick pop quiz of 5 quick questions. Again, you need a 4 out of 5 score and 80% per the real estate commission. So take your quick pop quiz, and we will come back for our 4th and final section, which is permitted and prohibited activities for you, your broker, and your unlicensed assistants. So we'll see you soon.